Okay, so babies are adorable. This kind of is an overview of the different things that that video was just showing. But basically, newborns do a lot of reflexes. Remember back from the learning chapter, reflexes are these quick, kind of innate, involuntary responses to different environmental stimuli. They don't have to be learned. So researchers have hypothesized, they've looked at the various actions that babies tend to do. They've named it, so we saw most of these in the video. And researchers have tried to hypothesize why these reflexes might exist, what these evolutionary function might be of these reflexes. I don't super care that you memorize each of these, but just it's kind of fascinating to know that infants do have some movement, they have some ability to engage with their environment, things they didn't have to learn, and they seem to be purposeful at least. So moving on now to what newborns can actually sense, some of their sensory abilities. So again, we talked about in the vision lecture how newborn visual acuity, as I mentioned earlier, is pretty weak when you first start out. So seeing contrast, seeing lines, colors, they can't really make it out super well. And as they get a little bit older, they're able to start to put color to things and really see, definitive line boundaries and whatnot. They seem to be really sensitive to taste and smells. That's how they're getting a lot of their nutrients and whatnot. So they have sensations for taste and smells. They seem to have hearing that seems to be sensitive to normal human speech hearing range, which is good because that's what most of their audio input is their parents speaking to them. So one of the most interesting things to me, though, is newborns tend to have a preference for face-like visual stimuli. So this kind of initially led researchers to believe that faces are the super salient visual stimulus that infants are going to want to look at a face because there's a social kind of component to a face. There's an emotional reward by interacting and having a bond with a face, right? Um, Turns out I have an asterisk here. That's not entirely true. So what they really have a preference for instead is stimuli that are top heavy, like have kind of face-like structures, but aren't inherently faces. So for instance, there are 6 different options here. The first 2 classically are faces. One kind of removes some of the peripheral cues, but you still see the internal face. Newborns will look and preferentially stare at both of these images. So, okay, researchers are like, they like faces. Turns out it's also true when you show them cartoon faces. So even when you take away some of the realistic kind of salience to them and just, replace the eyes with circles or the mouth with a shape, they'll still respond to it. Even when you take away, again, some of the peripheral hair, neck, clothing kind of cues, they'll respond to just 2 dots and a shape underneath. So far, researchers have shown newborns likewise will respond just as well to these 2 images on the right. Basically, anything that is top heavy, that has 2 things on the top and 1 thing on the bottom, will cause a newborn to stare at it, to have a preference for it. And it doesn't even need to have, a face-like kind of head shape. Literally 3 dots in this orientation will cause newborns to stare. And it's not just, interest for all sorts of shapes or 3 dots or whatever. Researchers have shown that literally if you take the shape and you turn it upside down so that the single dot is on top and the 2 dots are on the bottom, newborns don't look at it as much anymore. So initially, it was thought they have a preference for face-like stimuli, but like emphasis on like, anything that's top-heavy tends to draw their attention.